We live in a presentist society that often turns its back on everything that's old or everything that comes from the past, and only knows how to talk and is fascinated by novelty and what comes from the future. But there are people who are dedicated to reviewing figures from the most recent past and their writings to better understand where we come from, to reconstruct stories and genealogies from new perspectives, and to make our interpretation of the past richer in order to have more tools to face the present and the future. Today we will do this with Brenna Moore, the professor of theology at Fordham University. And welcome to a new chapter of Indefugibles.
Indefugibles, el podcast de la Càtedra d'Ètica i Pensament Cristià de l'IQS, amb Xavier Casanovas i Oriol Quintana. Un podcast amb la col·laboració de Catalunya Religió.
So, Brenna Moore is a professor of theology at Fordham University in New York. Next year, she will take the direction of the theology department. She is a specialist in the area of modern Christianity, focusing on Catholic intellectual and cultural history in Europe. Brenna, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's wonderful to be with you in conversation and here in Spain.
And we have also Oriol, as usual. Hello, Oriol.
Hello, everybody.
So, who is Brenna Moore, and where does this interest about theology come from?
Yes, well, thank you. So I teach theology at a Jesuit school in New York called Fordham University, and I've been at Fordham 16 years in the theology department. But I did my PhD at Harvard University, which is a secular school, but they have a big divinity school where they teach religion, theology, religion from a cultural perspective, anthropology of religion, world religions. But Harvard University at the time was located just a few meters from Weston Jesuit Seminary, and they had open enrollments. So I could take classes at Harvard, but I took many classes at Weston Jesuit Seminary. I took a lot of classes with a Jesuit who's very famous. Maybe some listeners may have heard of him, John O'Malley, who has written a lot on the history of the Jesuits, a wonderful Jesuit priest. And at Harvard, the classes were more, the critical study of religion, religious diversity, feminist history of religion, and then I did a lot of more kind of traditional Catholic theology there. And I really loved that kind of combination of newer approaches to religion with traditional Jesuit education. And then when I finished my degree, I began work at Fordham.
Wow. Really interesting, but it seems strange to us because if we had a theologian here, a woman, it would be 99% that she's a nun here in Spain, but you are a lay person. How can this happen? How can we understand that people study theology not for being a priest
not for professional reasons?
Yes.
No.
Right. Yeah, I mean, at Fordham too, we had our first. Most of the women in our department for many years were nuns, and we had priests and nuns in the department teaching, more traditional topics. But one of the most famous nuns, who actually has been published in Spanish, her name is Sister Elizabeth Johnson. She does feminist theology, and she taught in my department at Fordham. She recently retired. But she paved the way for the invitation of many people at Fordham to think we really can't do theology without women. And there's really no reason that you would have to do theology just if you're a nun or a priest. And now we have many women in the department. I'm married, I have 2 children, I have a 15-year-old daughter and an 11-year-old son. And we have other women in the department who are lay people as well. All who have children, and we even have in our department some women who are scholars of Judaism. We have another woman who's a scholar of Islam. So the Department of Theology at Fordham has been open to studying and teaching our students other religious traditions and teaching the deep wellspring of Catholic spirituality, Catholic history, Catholic theology from lay people. But I am a Catholic. I am a practicing Catholic. And for me, you know, I'm not just teaching kind of about Catholicism like a social scientist. You know, for me, it is a living tradition, very connected with the living tradition of Catholicism. And I'm close to many communities of nuns and priests. And I take my students to, you know, to meet communities of nuns, to meet the Benedictines on their farm, to meet, you know, so for me, all of that is very, very important. But I do it from the perspective of a layperson.
That's very interesting because we are not used to this level of pluralism in our schools, in our cities here.
Yeah, and I think, you know, it's different. You know, the United States is so big, and it's different at other Jesuit schools in other parts of the country, but New York is just so diverse. It's so diverse, and the Bronx in particular is so diverse, and a lot of, you know, our students who maybe don't live on campus, they live in New York City with their family and commute. A lot of them are Muslim or even Hindu, families from Pakistan, India. So it really, if we really want to have our students in our theology classes learn about their own faith traditions and take very seriously the personal questions about belief in God, about faith, about the meaning of evil, goodness, justice, we really have to do it from a diverse perspective. And I don't know if this is, I know this is true in many schools in the United States, that there's usually more women in our class, more female students than male students. And so it would really make no sense if it was all men teaching Catholicism. That really wouldn't fit our student body, especially because we want them, you know, to see these traditions as living traditions, as contemporary traditions that speak to us today. These aren't just relics from the past, or we're not just looking at a museum, you know. So we love to have, you know, representatives from living traditions and invite our female students to meet feminist theologians, to talk about how you can have a robust faith life and be a mother and have a career. So it's really important for us to meet our students where they are and to represent these traditions in a way that kind of reflects our student body.
Yeah, I have a question. You've been a teacher for a long time now, and what is can you remember any moment throughout your career in the classroom, I mean, that was a special moment? If you had to single out a moment of, I don't know, a moment of revelation or something a moment that was very significant in the exercise of teaching, what would you say?
Yes, I think I've learned so much from the Jesuits about teaching the whole person, you know, and the whole person in their ethical dimension, their spiritual life, you know, not just, you know, here, read this theology book, take a test. And I have really been shaped by Jesuit pedagogy. And one memory I have that is so special to me is I had the students at the end of the semester give a short 6-minute presentation about how any text from the semester has helped them have a deeper understanding of something in their own life, like their family, the city.
I'm copying this exercise right now from my students.
Yes, okay. So in our classroom, we often have a lot of disparities in wealth. You know, we have wealthy families whose maybe the father is a banker on Wall Street, they have a house in the Hamptons, but we have, you know, students who are Pakistani immigrants whose father is a taxi driver, you know, in one classroom. And I had one student, you know, give her presentation at the end of the semester, a white student, very beautiful, and she said, well, we read Paul Ricoeur about beauty, and I love the beauty of the sunset at the beach. And she showed a picture of herself on her boat in her bikini at the beach. And it was like, okay, you know, glad you learned something. Not the most profound, you know, not the most profound experience, but that is our classroom. That is her experience. You know, she did understand something about the nature of beauty. Okay, then literally 30 seconds later, the next student, a Muslim student in hijab, is a pre-health student going to medical school. And she said that she was so transformed by Gustavo Gutierrez and liberation theology about faith-seeking justice. And she had decided through a lot of reflection in this class where we did a lot on spirituality and justice that she really wanted to use her medical degree after medical school to go to places in the world of extreme suffering and violence, and maybe even work for Doctors Without Borders and go to Syria.
Mm-hmm.
And she was so transformed, but she said the problem is her family are from Bengali,
Mm-hmm.
and they left, violent precarity to come to the United States. And in Islam, you very much are, say, close to your family,
Yeah.
and her family would be horrified. Like, why would you ever go back
Yeah.
to that part of the world? We left that, and she loves her parents, and her parents, helped her get this education. And so she said she does not know how she will live, with this tension of this desire to serve and desire to go from, the mission to the poor and precarity to, dedication to her family.
Mm-hmm.
And, in hijab and how profound that is, and what a profound student this is, and what a profound person, and a profound reflection on her life and what she's going to use her education for, compared to the student on the boat. And it's just in one classroom. And I just thought, what a gift this is to just be with these, with kind of this extreme difference, but also like these students who are so serious and so profound. And then I'm still in touch with that student. This student was in my class maybe 10 years ago, and now she's done with medical school, but she stayed in the United States, but she's a doctor at a community health clinic, working with immigrants and the poor. She didn't really need to go to Syria. It's like in New York we have precarity, and so she's still, safe and near her family. But I'm just so blessed to be part of students like that, their journey,
That's a great experience, yes.
Wow. I would like to talk a little bit about your field of study. You wrote a book about what you call spiritual friendship, about people that from their Catholicism, they fight against or positioned against the extreme right-wing movements at that time, 100 years ago. Maybe that teaches us something for our times. What is this concept of a spiritual friendship, and who are these people that you study and you read a lot about them and you talk about them in your book? Who are them?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so in, I think it was 2021, my book came out, it's called Kindred Spirits, Friendship and Resistance at the Edges of Modern Catholicism. And I say this is a history at the edges of modern Catholicism because it's a history of communities dedicated to spiritual friendship that I discovered in the archives. So it's kind of at the edges, on the margins of mainstream Catholic history. And I'll tell you how I discovered this. I do a lot of research on the history of women writers, women intellectuals, and that is not in canonical history. You have to kind of create new knowledge. You go to archives, studied unpublished documents, and my first book was about Raissa Maritain, Jacques Maritain's wife, who was a mystic and a poet and a writer. And when I went to her archive in France, I found all her letters and correspondence and photos and devotional material, all the material stuff of her intellectual life, and it was totally about friendship. She had vast correspondences with friends, and when I opened up letters that she wrote to friends, that she received from friends, there were often little spiritual medals and crosses, almost like the letters themselves were spiritual objects, And her memoir was called Les Grandes Amitiés, great friendship. And she had her devotional life was often, pictures of saints, popes, and pictures mixed with pictures of her friends. So her spiritual life was very much powered by her friendship. But I didn't want to write my first book about friendship because I was young, and I thought, oh, that's so typical feminine. I'm a woman writing about women, writing about friendship. That's kind of soft. But then when I got a little older, I thought, who cares? I don't care if people think it's soft. It's true. It's truly what was so important. And I realized that she was just the beginning of this vast world of Catholic intellectuals who were active in the years before Vatican II, working on, Christianity and democracy, Christian anti-fascism, all around the world. Many of them had connections to Paris, but were working in, all over the world, building the foundations for Vatican II. But in every case, friendship was the most important thing in their lives. And most of them were lay people. And so my book is, each chapter is like a little trio of friendship or a pair of friendship, and about how they understood the practice of friendship for their spiritual life. But it was also a metaphor for a lot of the work of solidarity. So things like in France, they had, their organizations, their little associations were often had the language of amitié, amistad in the language, Christian-Jewish friendship was the name of the associations against anti-Semitism. But also in Harlem in the United States, there were these little kind of utopian communities of black and white interracial relations, and it was called the Friendship House. So they were these little experimental communities that reached for the metaphors of friendship as a way to understand new forms of solidarity. But it was also, there was a lot of debates about what this meant. Like some people thought, well, friendship is just the end goal. Like if we can just be friends as black and white people, the world will be better. But many people, many black people thought, no, that's naive. That's just so naive. That friendship is just the starting place. You begin with friendship, and then together you work to make real changes in society. Friendship isn't the end, but the beginning. And so my book is a lot about the tensions around what does friendship mean, what is the role of friendship, but in each case, I explore the role of women, in this, and so I had to do it all from archival research. So I went to archives in France, and some archives were digitized from Chile, but I did a lot of archival research in Harlem, and I uncovered really a global community of very creative Catholic thinkers who were completely animated by the power of friendship in their spiritual and political lives. And so that's what that book is about.
But there is also a tradition in Catholicism discussing friendship, isn't there?
Yes.
I just can quote any author now, but I think the spiritual friendship is something that has been discussed within the Catholic tradition. No?
In fact, if you think about the Jesuits, it's told that they have the names of their companions with them always, no?
Yes.
Like
in their heart.
In their heart,
yes.
Like they had the names from their letters.
Yes.
They cut the names from the letters, no? That's
100%. And in fact, most of the people that I study that were from the 20th century were what I call kind of neo-medieval. They did a lot of reading about, medieval monastic communities, and there's like a 12th century book called Amicitia Spiritual. There's books about spiritual friendship from monastic 12th, 13th century writers. One of the women, a French woman who was active in the resistance to anti-Semitism, Marie-Madeleine Davy, she's French. She was a scholar of Cistercian monasticism, but she has written many books about the role of friendship in the life of Cistercian monastic communities. So it's really a medieval idea that comes from monastic communities who have to, find love and life outside the nuclear family, outside sexuality, outside, and that for them, communities of friendship are crucial partners on the pathway to God. But it's a very Catholic idea, and we even have things like Jean de Chantal, and
I'm thinking Simone Weil as well, no?
Yes.
Because she has a writing on friendship as an implicit way of loving God.
Absolutely.
And that's a beautiful text.
Absolutely. And one of the themes of my book is that sometimes friendship takes place in what I call non-ordinary realms of consciousness, in memory, imagination, and prayer, friendship in that way. Invisible friendship, and that's very much like maybe what we might think of like devotion to saint as kind of a friendship in your heart. But the woman, this woman who was the scholar of monasticism, Davy, was a friend of Simone Weil in France, and she dedicated this utopian community in post-war France, dedicated to kind of international peace, to the memory of Simone Weil. It was called Maison Simone Weil, and it was, but it was about her friendship in memory of Simone Weil, but Simone Weil is very crucial to this story, absolutely. But same with the monastic. I think it's a very Catholic way of being, and I think that the other point in my book is that I think we all understand Catholicism as a very communal faith, that it's different from maybe a more Protestant individual notion of faith, but often we think of the communal faith like church or parish or institution, but often on the ground that communal faith is more intimate, more interpersonal. Friendship is a little bit of a more intimate way of thinking about community than just church, which is sometimes bigger. Yeah.
Whoa. Amazing. No.
Very interesting.
Do you have any questions?
No, we have to finish more or less, but maybe we have time for something more.
No, I was just hearing you. I was thinking that one of the reasons why I like coming here to work at IQS is because of friendship. So I think friendship is very important, even in a day-to-day level. I mean, basically what keeps you motivated sometimes when everything else fails. At work, for example, I'm going to meet my friends there. So,
yes.
And the connection in friendship, I think it's spiritual too, because friendship is keeping a distance, but also being very intimate. It's an image of the relation we can have with God, as a faithful person. I don't know.
Yes, absolutely. And one of my favorite things about being in a theology department is I think that our faculty have an intuitive sense of this, kind of the importance of friendship and the spiritual power of friendship. In our department, we have retreats together. Even though we're all so busy, it's crazy, but we really do take time for meals, for retreats, and we do feel connected as a community. And I think it's because it's really not a secular community. And even the non-Catholic, it's just the vibe. It's kind of the invisible vibe. It values spiritual friendship, and I think it's because of our Catholic roots. I think, yeah.
You told us that you have wrote a book that has appeared now. That's exactly the title of the book.
Yes,
new book,
and that book is it kind of comes out of some of the questions in my first book, but that one is called Mutuality in El Barrio: Stories of Little Sisters of the Assumption. And I know we don't have much time, but I'll just say a couple sentences.
Please.
But I have been involved for many years as a volunteer with a community of nuns in East Harlem who do incredible work for migrants in East Harlem and immigration. And I wrote a book about their history and their work. But the word mutuality is in the title of the book because they use that concept as their kind of orienting value, that they don't just go and kind of help the poor, but they're in mutual relationships of respect and love with the migrants. And often the migrants do a lot of leadership at the organization and work there. It's not just, the hierarchy helper and being helped. It is, I think mutuality is another way of talking about spiritual friendship. So I think, they don't even know the people that I wrote about in my first book, but it's just a worldview that's just a global worldview, and it's mutuality, it's spiritual friendship, it's community, and it's really all over the world, and it's by far my favorite thing about Catholicism. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So this conversation confirms to me the importance of having theology and spiritual dialogue in the university, of course. Thank you very much, Verena.
Thank you for having me. It was wonderful to be in conversation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you also, Oriol. And we meet in the next chapter of Indafugi Plus.
Catalunya Religió.